If you have a child of junior high or high school age, you are probably considering giving them a cell phone, or maybe they have one already and you're realizing that you didn't really set yourself up for success. Today we're going to talk about cell phones, having a contract, talking through really important issues with your kids. Stay tuned. Welcome to the Peaceful Home. I'm Teresa, if we haven't met, and I'm a parenting coach. I love to help parents deal with difficult issues in the home, especially training. This one is near and dear to my heart. I have just seen so many disasters that could have been avoided because of improper cell phone use. I read on a blog once that if you're going to let your kids drive the social media car, they need to have training and a license. And I couldn't agree more. So often we just hand kids a phone, we might tell them a couple of things, and then we hope for the best. And I will tell you that is not good enough anymore. I have heard so many reports, in particular about porn being accessed on cell phones. And I personally have counseled parents with a third grader, fifth grader, and a junior higher who all were accessing porn on a friend's phone at school during recess or breaks. As parents, we have to be so vigilant for the safety of our children. Now, if you are looking for a quick printable of a cell phone contract that you can print out and hand to your child, I'm not going to provide that today. There are tons of those on Pinterest, and I encourage you to look at them. But even more so, I am going to give you 24 things to consider today. And I hope that you will go over each of those things and come up with your own contract that suits you, your child, and your values. So the first thing I would ask is, why does your child need a cell phone? If it is to have a phone to call you in case of emergency, they do not need a smartphone. And I would suggest putting that off as long as possible. You will be going against the grain, you will be criticized, but I have met parents that have done it. They have not given their child a cell phone until high school or college. You can do it too. Now, all of this needs to start with mutual respect and brainstorming. Sit down with your kids, whether they have a phone yet or you're thinking about that, start talking together. What things do they notice with their friends and their phones? What things do they like? What things do they not like? What rules do they think should be in place? You can throw in some of your ideas and see what they think about them, see how they respond, but don't be too heavy-handed. This should be kind of fun, and you guys are really kind of coming up with ideas together. Now, the word contract is a bit severe. I want you to be really careful that you are not locking your children into this thing of where if you could just get them to promise and give their word, then they would never break this contract. And the thing is, if that's your approach and the kids do break it, they are not going to want to tell you. I am really big on not making unrighteous vows. When you say, I will never do this, I promise to do this, that usually does not lead to good things. And so I suggest a little more of an open, transparent, give and take relationship where you talk with your children about these things. You do put them in writing, but we're going to go over a little bit how I think you should handle their promises. You have to train your children to communicate with you and be honest and transparent. If they confess something to you and you come down with the hammer, they're gonna think, I'm not talking to my mom again. I'm never telling my dad what's really going on. You have to be willing to hear them out with a straight face, no panic, no rage, and be very fair in your assessment. If it's something that needs a consequence because they have broken a family rule, then of course you want to take care of that. But your attitude while they're talking to you is so important. Make sure that they feel that they are loved, that they are accepted exactly the way they are, that you love them no matter what, and you're willing to hear anything they have to say. Save any judgment or criticism for later. Hear them out. Make sure you're understanding what they are saying. Tell them back how you think they're feeling, and then say, okay, I'd like some time to think about this. As parents, we too quickly hand down a punishment or a consequence, often in anger and frustration, and that doesn't have the best fruit. Now, on the other hand, rules without consequences are merely suggestions. And you can suggest until the cows come home, and your kids will not necessarily comply. There has to be consequences when your child isn't living up to your expectations. They are breaking family rules. They are going out against what you've asked them to do. You have to have these things in place. This means you need to look at the actual contract or guidelines that you have in writing and ask yourself, what will we do if any of these are broken? And you need to already have a response, at least in the back of your mind. Now, again, don't throw that consequence out right away. Hear them out or confront them with what you've found out. Give them a chance to explain themselves. Take a break, pray, consider the options, and make sure you're calm before you have more conversation with your child. When you're setting up these guidelines, do not make a rule for something you cannot enforce. Now, I saw on one contract, let me think of how it was worded. You must have your cell phone in your pocket when walking in a public place. Now, I think we can all understand the reason for that rule. When kids or adults are on their phone, they're not watching where they're going. My husband teaches high school, and he says all the time, he sees kids literally walk into walls or trip on steps because they just have their eyes on their phone. So that's a really great idea, but are you going to follow your child everywhere to make sure that they don't break that rule? Don't make it a rule. You can talk about the wisdom of it, but they've got to figure that one out on their own. Don't make a rule that you cannot follow up on. Now, as a foundation to all of this, you do need to have a healthy, respectful relationship with your child or teen. And they also need to understand the difference between privacy and secrecy. I talk about this in my parenting class. It's one thing to have privacy. You may go in to shower or change your clothes and have the door closed. But when you have a friend over, you don't get to be behind closed doors. Also, you don't get to keep secrets intentionally from your parents. And so we talk about that stuff a lot. And for the most part, yes, we give our children privacy when it's appropriate. There should be no privacy with cell phones. It's just not safe. You need to be completely aware of what your child is doing, what they are sending, what they are receiving. Okay, we're ready to launch into the 24 things for you to consider. I'm probably going to throw these things out the way that I would say them or the way that I would put them in a contract for one of my kids. But really, these are ideas, and I want you to remember that, and I want you to look at them more as how would we handle this particular area? Number one, who pays for what? Now, our children were not allowed to get a cell phone until they had their first job and had the ability to pay for it. They were responsible to pay for the phone, the monthly service, any repairs, any screen protectors, cables. If something got lost, broken, damaged by themselves or others, they were completely responsible. Number two, when can the cell phone be used and how is it charged? We required our children to charge their phones in a common area. They could not have it in their phone overnight. It could be charged in our room or maybe a living room. A lot of families also turn off the internet at a certain time. If that's the case, it might not be a problem for them to charge their phone in their bedrooms, but you need to think those things through. Also, there might be times when as a family you decide, hey, the phone is put away on Sundays or after this time or whatever. You designate times when the phone is, everybody's phones are shut off. Oh, this brings me to a really important point. These guidelines are for everyone in the home because if the parents can't abide by these guidelines, we can't expect our teenagers to do it either. And so it's very important that you are coming alongside your child and following the same rules. Number three, what are the data limits? what happens with overages, how do they keep track, and do they pay if they go over? And number 4, phone use can be limited or terminated as deemed by parents for disrespect, disobedience, breaking family rules or the phone contract, incomplete chores, or unacceptable grades. You set that up ahead of time, that taking the phone, even if they pay for it, is an acceptable consequence if needed. These first 4 were kind of practical responsibilities. And now we're going to launch into family relationships. Number 5, when parents call, you pick up. Have guidelines as far as what you expect, that if you are calling to check in, your children will excuse themselves from whatever they're doing and they will pick up or call back as soon as possible. That includes answering texts in a timely manner as well. Number 6, no phones at mealtime. And this is an important one. People talk about it, and I just think we really have to go back to having family mealtime. Even if it's just a couple nights a week that your family is able to sit down together, don't have phones be a distraction. And make sure that you as the parent do not have your phone at the table. Number 7, you might want to set up a rule about no cell phones when the family is interacting. You're having a game night, you're sitting around chatting. One of the rules that we had was 1 screen at a time. So if a child chose to come and watch a family movie with us, they could not also be on their phone. Number 8, how do you want your kids to use their phones in the car? Now, I mean when they're passengers. Sometimes we get in the habit of just being on the phone constantly. And a quick drive to the market could have sparked a really great conversation, except everybody was on their phone. Maybe you don't care if they use the phone for quick trips around town, but on long drives, you want that time available for conversation. Maybe you don't want them using the phones around town, but you allow them to use them for long drives. It's really up to you. Just think about it ahead of time and make sure that your kids know what to expect rather than nothing's been clearly stated and you just nag them and bug them. Really, you're on your phone again? Like, why are you on your phone right now? That is not helpful at all, and it trains your child to tune you out. Okay, now we're moving into manners and morals. Number 9, make sure your children understand that lying about their phones will break trust, and that trust is very hard to rebuild. You also want to make it clear that when they do mess up, you want them to come to you. In fact, if they come to you, there may be a lesser consequence than if you caught them in something. You do want your kids to feel safe, to come to you and confess when they've blown it, and you want to reward that behavior. Number 10, we want to honor others and the expectations that they have outside of the home. So for example, church, school, a friend's house, you want them to be courteous and reading the room, seeing what the rules are, for example, at school. If you were to get a call from a teacher that your child was using their phone when they shouldn't be, then they know that there's going to be a consequence at home. Number 11, think. Think before you post, before you speak, before you text. I'm sure some of you have seen a meme like this. The 5 letters in think spell out 5 considerations. T, is it true? H, is it helpful? I, is it inspiring? N, is it necessary? And K, is it kind? This is a great thing to teach all of your kids to apply all of the time. You could go online and print out a copy of this and put it on your fridge, put it next to the computer, just as a reminder that this is the standard for your home. Number 12, don't post, say, or text anything that you wouldn't want your grandma to hear, your teacher, your coach, your boss, or Jesus. These are good things for our kids to think about. Sometimes they're not so concerned about their parents finding out something. They know their parents love them, but all of a sudden they would feel a lot of embarrassment if a coach that they really love saw something inappropriate that they posted. So this is just a little bit of a heart check. Number 13, do not post or send photos of anyone else without their permission. And number 14, don't share someone else's story. And if in doubt, ask. We talked about this a lot as a family. Let's say that you just find out that a friend of yours is getting married and you want to go and post it on social media. We would say, that is not your story to share. That's their story to share. And we've seen that a lot where people will post that someone is pregnant or graduating from college, and you might be really excited for a friend, but it's their story to tell. If you want to post something like that, please make sure you have permission first. Number 15, do not text emotionally charged conversations, disagreements, confrontations. If you get to that point in a texting conversation, switch to a phone call. I wish adults could understand this. I do a lot of counseling with people who text very intense conversations, and there is so much room for misunderstanding on a text message or an email. When you don't see someone's face, you don't hear their tone of voice, there can just be a lot of confusion. So train your children at an early age to be brave enough to have a phone call or a face-to-face conversation for these important things. Number 16 is pretty basic, kind of goes back to the think, but in everything that we do, we want to act with kindness and respect. Now, these last few are about safety, and these are probably the most important ones to consider. Number 17, all passwords are shared with parents and spouse. So for your kids, they have to share their password with you. For spouses, you share with each other. My husband and I have the same password on our iPads and the same password on our phones. So it is literally, we don't even have to think about it to go on and use one another's devices, and there are no problems at all with any secrecy. The use of a phone or internet grants the parent permission to search the phone anytime. They don't need warning. They don't need a child's permission, and same with spouses. These are just really good rules to have in place. Number 18, don't text while driving, and don't drive with someone who texts while they're driving. Number 19, do not send or post inappropriate photos, suggestive photos, or anything containing nudity, and we will define nudity as the showing of any part of your body that is normally covered by clothing. Also, do not ask anyone to send those things to you. Number 20, if anyone sends you something that is suspicious, that makes you feel uncomfortable, that you know is appropriate, or brings you fear, tell parents or spouse immediately. Number 21, do not reveal any personal details or your location, including posting that you are home alone. Number 22, your friends and contacts on social media should all be people you know personally. And you need permission to add new friends. This is very important, especially the younger your child or teen is. They can, of course, build trust. They may have a very good reason to add someone that they don't know personally, and that's something you can discuss and decide if you want to give permission for that. Number 23, anything on your phone can be found and sent to anyone and everyone for the rest of your life. These things cannot be hidden. They cannot be destroyed. Once things are out on the internet, you cannot take them back. Your child really needs to understand this and know the consequences of a stupid post when you're 16 literally could keep you from getting a job. Number 24, no apps may be added without the permission of parents or spouse. So here you have 24 things to consider. I'm not suggesting that you have 24 rules on your contract, but consider the most important things, talk about it with your spouse, with your kids, and come up with what you think would be the best plan for your family. This is completely customizable, so make sure you do what suits you. Did I leave anything out? I would love to have you comment below if you can think of anything that should be added to this list. There's no way I could have thought of everything, and individual experiences is what gives us the wisdom And you guys may have encountered things that I haven't. And so I would really love if you would comment and let me know if you have any thoughts about this, as well as any new ideas. If this was of value to you, I would appreciate a thumbs up, and feel free to subscribe. It is free. It's how you let YouTube know what type of content you like. I would really appreciate it. Thank you so much for joining me today on The Peaceful Home. Have a great day.